Okay, so when I see a call of worship on someone, it usually comes in the form of a question, because I don't want to predict their life for them. So because I hold authority by being the worship pastor, I don't want to say things like, in the name of Jesus, I think you're called to lead worship, which in my story, someone recognized the call of worship on my life, but they didn't tell me. And if I said that, if they would have, I would have been like, yeek, I'm not ready for that. And so, so when I see that, there's a guy in our church, sweet, sweet guy. I was sitting in a Mexican restaurant in Boulder, Colorado, meeting this guy for the first time as friends, hanging out. And I felt like the Lord spoke to me, like, this guy is worshiping him. And I thought, really? Like, while we're here in the Mexican restaurant, really? And so I just began to ask him, hey, do you do music? And he said, no, not really. And I said, oh, really? You don't do any sort of music? And he said, no. And then that time I was like, this is getting heated for him. He's getting emotional about it. This is weird. So I just let it settle. I let it settle, and I just didn't mention it. And then 2 weeks later, I saw him again. He said, hey, I want to tell you something. You asked me if I do music, and I quickly said no. And then you asked again, and I think I got a little, pissy. Can I say that on camera? I think I got a little pissy. And that's because I have done some music, but there's a lot of fear for me in it, and I'm pretty shy. And when people recognize that, I could tell the Lord probably spoke to you about that. And I'm like, oh, this guy's calling me out. And he said, so I'm not sure what music looks like for me. And I said, well, would you like to start a process? And he said, I don't know. I said, well, here's the deal. I'm not going to promise you anything. I don't promise people things other than a journey with Jesus, and I'm going to help facilitate it. But I'm probably going to let you down, and your expectations are going to be this, and I'm not going to meet them or whatever. And he said, okay. And so we do have a program at our church. It's not a school of worship, but it's got some character things. It's called Discovering Leadership. So I immediately plug him into those things for character, because it talks about character versus talent is the first talk. So this idea of, it doesn't matter if your voice is the best in the world, if your heart is empty and without character, this is a shallow, terrible place to serve from. And if you're only leaning in your talent and not into who Jesus is and who he's forming you to be, you're not going to make it. You'll just burn out. And so I put him in those sorts of rooms to develop his character, which is nice because it means my church is already doing this with its leaders, and I don't have to create something. And then I just told him, I'm going to start pairing you to lead worship with me, but you're going to come in my office, per se. We don't really have offices, but you're going to come in my office, and we're going to sit and work through set lists really granularly so that you start to see how I put music together. And then I also need you to come with the songs you're leading and act as if I'm the band and you're trying to communicate with me what you want to do. Because when you get to rehearsal, there's a set amount of time to communicate, and people get so lost, they just end up staring at you like, I'm not exactly sure how to tell the drummer where to come in. And so we work through these really meticulous technical things by ourselves so that when he's there Thursday night for rehearsal, it sets him up to be successful. It sets him up for me to be able to lead him through the moments that get sticky, but then he's already had practice. It's actually like playing a sport. He's practiced before he's gotten to practice in order to practice again for the game, right? And so we do things like that. And then the next step would be kind of taking him out from underneath me and putting him with these other worship leaders that are capable of leading on their own, and just telling them, hey, listen, he needs to feel that moment. It's like when you're learning to swim. He needs to feel that moment of, I know I can swim, but I'm going to the deep end and there's no ground below me unless I sink down. I need to feel the tension of learning what it means to tread water and be on my own a little bit. So they're going to be extra nervous. It's going to be messy. They may make mistakes and forget words or whatever, and that's okay. He's got to grow, because if not, it tends to be me, because I'm like a nurturing mother type, carrying them through, and they never step out on their own to grow and to go, ugh, I should have known the lyrics of that song better, but I didn't, and I'm going to do better next time. And so we've got, again, our church has these processes of character. We use a lot of, there's a book called Preventing Ministry Failure, if people feel actually called to ministry. So that's a little bit of a deeper, they don't just want to serve and worship, but they want to be a pastor, they think. So we have these curriculums that we've written, and that kind of, again, develops their heart and such. And then there's these really practical rhythms of my worship community, like rehearsal, hanging out with leaders and co-leading, me making you choose the set list. So I send you songs and you put the songs together, and just starting to give away and making them try. And I don't know if you're familiar with this, but there's a discipleship model called IRTDMN. It's you identify, recruit, train, deploy, monitor, and nurture. And I think Vineyard Resources has like a pamphlet about this, but our church lives and breathes by this sort of discipleship model. It's this idea of, I see the call of worship on someone's life, so I'm identifying them. Then I talk to them and ask questions and recruit them. Then I put them in my moment to train them. Then I monitor, and they watch me, and then I watch them, and I give feedback. And that's the monitoring. And then nurturing is just the sustaining of pastoral care once they're settled in. Like, just because someone's arrived, like just because you say, Annabeth Morgan's an established worship leader, I still need to be nurtured by my pastoral leaders, whether that's another worship pastor or, in my case, it's our head pastors. And so we use that model a lot.